Hello, everybody. This is Chedva Rose, your host for the Jewish Adulting Podcast. And tonight I have with me Rabbi Shlomo Slatkin. Now, Slatkin is a certified Imago relationship therapist. He's an advanced clinician, and he's a certified Imago workshop presenter and a faculty associate of the Imago International Training Institute. Together with his wife, Rivka, they founded the Marriage Restoration Project, a global initiative to help couples stay together, and be happy. Out of concern for the global breakdown of relationships and family, he has made it his mission to help save marriages in 2 days by way of marriage intensive retreats. He has also created an online marriage school self-guided program as an affordable solution for quality marriage help. Rabbi Slatkin also trains therapists and coaches in imago therapy. And for more information about his work, you can visit themarriagerestorationproject.com. I will put this information into the episode notes so you can look at it at your leisure. So Rabbi Slatkin, thank you so much for being here.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Sure. So there I did. I said, I'm trying not to say everybody. Before we get started, there's two things that I want to say. One is that anything that you hear here is by no means a clinical diagnosis or a promise of getting better. It's just to open our minds up to different modalities. And so if you're seeing a therapist, you should definitely seek your therapist's advice on following any of the recommendations that are given, or reach out to Rabbi Slatkin directly. Also, this is not a forum for halachic debate, discussion, or consideration. So we're not making any halachic rulings. So whatever you hear here is something, if it's something that you want to bring to your rabbi, please do so. But we are not here to have that kind of conversation. Also, like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, all the things that help the podcast stay visible and introduce it to as wide of an audience as we can, so that our amazing interviewees can get the coverage and get the opportunity to listen to these wonderful podcasts. So without further ado, I wanted to get into what Rabbi Slatkin and I discussed in terms of the topic for this evening. And obviously I knew when I first started the podcast that I was going to get to a marriage one eventually. There's a few ones that you're going to have to get to. You're going to have to get to kids. You're going to have to get to mental health. You're going to have to get to marriage. You're going to have to get to tefillah. There's just certain things that we're all dealing with. So a lot of people are dealing with marriage as it is, it's a very difficult relationship to be in to start. From the beginning, we know that even if you guys are exactly the same, just the virtue of being a man and a woman, you're already asking for conflict. But what I found particularly interesting about what you do, and I'm hoping you're going to explain it more to us in a minute, is that there's a focus on healing the individual as well as the couple healing. So why don't you explain to our audience a little bit about your background and a little bit about imago therapy and why you chose specifically to focus on this practice?
Sure. So I would say about my wife and I have been married for almost 23 years. And about 21 years ago, when our oldest child was born, we went to imago therapy. Why? We were having some challenges in the relationship, I think like every couple does. But it got to the point where maybe it was the sleepless nights, but got to the point where we needed to do something, or at least I thought we needed to do something. And there's always a dragger and a draggy. So I kind of was the dragger, and I kind of encouraged my wife to come. We both had recommendations from about Imago. So it was, Hashgacha Pratis, we heard about it. I actually heard about it in school. So I was at the time, I wanted to be a pulpit rabbi. I had just finished my smicha, and I was looking for different pulpits around the country. And I also was getting a master's in counseling psychology because I thought it would be a good thing to do and have background as a rabbi, because when you're dealing with people who need help, It's good to know a little bit more than just what you learn in yeshiva.
Yeah.
How to work, how to deal with people's real, the real issues. One time I spoke to a Hasidic Rebbe, and he said, every rabbi needs to be a psychologist because
Right.
they're coming to you, and people have a lot of problems, and they need real qualified help. So I was getting my degree. Anyway, I heard about Imago because I saw actually the book Getting the Love You Want in Someone's Bathroom, and someone did a presentation on it in my grad school in our marriage and family therapy class. Everyone had to do a book report, so someone did a presentation on it. But I had a friend that was an OT who referred me to Imago, and they referred me to the therapist that we saw. And my wife was referred to her Sheitelmacher, told her about Imago also. So we thought two people said the same thing. It must be shared. So we went to the Imago therapist, and it was unbelievable. After an hour and a half, we had felt like we had fallen back in love. We felt more, connected again. We saw hope for our relationship, and we were just really amazed. And I can go into it more if you want to know exactly what our session was about. But safe to say, like we were in a we're a little bit disillusioned, like every couple, when you start off in that what we call in the Imago the romantic stage, and we can talk about how that applies to from couples because the dating is a little bit different than in the secular world. But coming from that place of connection, we're thinking that everything is going to be great and that we're not going to have any problems. And then the rude awakening that, oh, what's going on here? This is not what I thought I was getting into. And maybe this is not the right. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I didn't know this person well enough. Maybe someone else would be better. All the questions that couples have when they're in what we call the power struggle. And then to realize that this is not just like a bad joke, but there's actually something that can come out of this suffering, that there's actually a purpose to all the suffering. There's something greater that can happen. And there's actually in this conflict, there's really growth that's trying to happen. And there's healing opportunities that are trying to happen, which I felt that's what Imago believes. And it's really much in line I believe, with Judaism, just the idea that every situation is Hashgacha Pratis is an opportunity for our own growth and healing. And I saw that very clearly after our first session as we started to learn about what was going on. And just to say a little bit about Imago, so the theory of Imago is that we explains why we are attracted to our partner. Why do we fall in love with our spouse? Why does Hashem put us together with this person? Why do we have this meshicha, this pull towards this person over anyone else? Unless there's some situations where people are highly pressured to get married, but I would say in most cases, unless you're like even in the Chassidisha world, but unless you're in the Chassidisha world, if you're in I would say like more like yeshivish or modern Orthodox world, you're going to have a connection with the person, and you're going to do it on your own accord that you want to marry this person. There could be some family pressure, but uh, you have a chance to know them a little bit more than in some other circles. So why did you pick this person? So the theory states that the word imago, it means image, that we all have an unconscious image of our ideal partner. And what that means is that we're looking for somebody unconsciously who is going to meet the image, which is the positive and negative characteristics of our parents. So in fact, we're looking to marry someone very, very similar, someone who reminds us of our childhood. If we had a good childhood, that makes a lot of sense. But if our childhood had challenges, why would we want to put ourselves in that situation? Well, it's happening unconsciously. It's happening because I mean, it does not say this in the theory, but the way that I would explain it, at least in terms of Judaism, is that Hashem is connecting us with this person. We know the Gemara says that a person has been their zivug is predestined from 40 days. Kodem Yitzir Savla, the Gemara in Sota says that it's the bas kol comes. The voice says, "Bas ploni laponi." This person is going to be a shidduch with this person. So Hashem is really the real shadchan. Hashem is putting couples together, and we're really a neshama is really two halves of one whole. And in Shemayim, they're really one whole, and they come down to two bodies in this world. So all these concepts that we know about in Judaism, we're able to see this in this, at least I find in this therapy, that we're finding the person who's going to help us best actualize ourselves, who's going to uniquely push our buttons and give us the opportunity to grow and heal. So In Imago, we say that marriage is for the purpose of growth and healing. And it's also the unfinished business of childhood. So we wind up picking someone who triggers us from childhood, but it gives us an opportunity to do it over and to really be able to heal, which is much more powerful than us just kind of doing the work on ourselves. It's almost putting you in the same kind of laboratory conditions and changing the outcome. So I'm going to pause there because I've said a lot, and there's a lot more I could say as well. But I
Yeah.
want to pause if you have any questions or about that.
Yes. Thank you. No, that's beautiful. I love that. I told you if you're gonna once you bring it back to like our hashkafas, I always get more excited about it that we married somebody for like tikkun purposes to either be mataka in our childhood or mataka in our midos, and that this person has something in us that 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 brings that about and gives us an opportunity where we wouldn't necessarily have an opportunity if it wasn't such uh, a finely designed system for self growth. So I love that concept. That's great. And I also love the concept, like I know through my own healing, through my own journey, as somebody who's been in therapy for many years now, that when I'm trying to, make, you know, fix a mistake from my childhood, it's very difficult because in my childhood, I didn't have any control, power. I was a child, and there was not too much I had power or control over. It's part of the helplessness of childhood. But as an adult, now I have the chance to rewrite that script. And that I just love that idea because it's so important to me to not feel powerless as an adult because I already did that as a child. I don't want to be doing that as an adult. So that is also a really powerful thought that I could be Mitaka in it through, this concept. So that's wonderful. What would like a typical therapy session look like? Why is it, and also not only what does a typical therapy session look like, but how is it so different from regular marriage counseling or other modalities that are out there?
Sure. So, because there's so much, so much to say about this, and I want to add to what we were talking about before also. But um, the ther the therapy session it's very different. I believe it's a different approach into how we heal. A traditional psychotherapy is focused on the individual, so it's all about kind of my issues that I have to work through, and even couples counseling a lot of couples counseling is basically individual therapy with a couple. So the therapist is working with one person, both of them are there, but they're focusing on one person at a time. They're not actually having the couple do the work. One of the differences of imago therapy is that the couple is doing the work. So the couple is actually facing each other, the couple is talking to each other. The therapist is more of a facilitator to help keep the couple stay in connection. So it's very, very different. It's not about the therapist is not there to give advice, to tell them what to do. Now, there's times, of course, when there's like psychoeducational uh, pieces when I would bring up things, and depending on how I'm working with a couple. Now, personally, I work with couples. I used to do the traditional 90-minute, well, we did 90-minute sessions, which is more than regular therapy, which is like 50 minutes, but 90 minutes for a couple. But over the time, I started really focusing on starting couples off with actually an intensive, so a 2-day retreat, 2-day intensive intervention. And then after that, then we do the weekly sessions. But so in that, we have a lot of psycho ed and learning about some of the concepts we're even talking about right now to understand that so they can conceptualize what's going on in the relationship much better. But even beyond that, the actual, I would say, major intervention of imago is what we call the imago dialogue process. That is where the couple talks to each other, and the focus is on the space between. We say ish v'isha zachol shchina shruid b'neihem. So I like to think of it that's this place where the shchina, where you make room, that shared space of the relationship, where you make room. If you have shalom in your relationship, you can make room for the shchina to dwell among you. And that's by realizing that I'm in relationship with someone else, with an other, and that I'm making space for that other. And the dialogue process is an opportunity to kind of cross the bridge into the world of the other, to experience the other, to not react, to kind of divest yourself of all of your own thoughts and feelings in the moment, and to really be present. And when you do that, that creates a healing experience, because why do people have their, well, issues, challenges, whatever word you want to call it? Well, we are wounded in relationship. We are all in some type of relationship, whether it's with our parents or other people when we growing up, or other people have very difficult life experiences, even when they're young adults or even older adults, and that impacts a person. And the anxiety of being in relationship, the anxiety of connection, for many people, connection is not necessarily safe for everyone, and people have different ways to react. To repair that, you need to have safe connection. So instead of just focusing on the problems and what's wrong and problem solving, and you have this disorder and you have that disorder, it's more about facilitating the relationship by helping the couple interact in a safe and connected way, because we believe that the healing dwells in that space between. That's where the change can happen. If you can it's kind of like we said before, like do over. If you can re-experience relationship in a safe way, and your spouse can be there for you, it can really change. It can change your brain. It can heal your past, and it can create a better present and future. So it's really different in the theory. It's in Imago, we talk about the relational paradigm. It's a different paradigm. It's the relationship is what heals. It's not about diagnosing and fixing one person or the other. It's about both people contributing to the relationship so that it can be a different entity.
Right. And I'm thinking as you're talking about like all the couples that we know from Tanakh and the various opportunities that they had to support each other. Not very much is known. Obviously, I assume that all the avos and imahos were extremely supportive of one another. But what also drew me about your story is that, you said when early on in your relationship, when you were in school and you heard about it, and then the Sheit Machar, and you guys were young and you had a new bit kid. But that is actually like when I think of those days, I think, what did we know about our needs, our traumas, our wounds, our, what did we even know then? We were kids. I don't know, like thinking now, if I walked into a room right now, with 23 years of marriage, where we were sort of almost like drawing at each other, pushing each other's buttons, but without this sort of structure, wouldn't that be even just compounding the wounds? Or is that something that you could still work with somebody who's had, so many years? Because unfortunately, I mean, you guys, I think we're very lucky. I don't know how many young couples seek marriage therapy at that point. We just think we all know everything and we'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. So I guess your question is, what happens when, as I said, we married for about 2 years, and when we did the therapy, what about all the couples who are coming with baggage for 20, 30 years? That's
Yes.
whatever childhood ones you have, also the marriage challenges and traumas, and it is, sure. I mean, it definitely can be harder. I can't say that, we had to do the work throughout. It's not like we just did it and we were done and everything lived happily ever after. We had our ups and downs along the way, and we always kind of came back to the same thing. And this is what kind of has given us the opportunity to really, stay together and to work on the relationship, even when things were challenging, even many years later. But couples, I mean, I work with couples who are coming in for, I mean, couples who've been married for 40 years. And if for sure there can, and every situation is different. Some people have a lot of hurt. Some people have really some people have done some pretty terrible things, and it will take longer and harder to repair. But we do find that even after years of, baggage in the relationship, it ultimately goes back to the past, because we say if it's hysterical, it's historical. The things that bother us most about our spouse are usually going to trigger us from the past, and we go back to those memories. So for sure, there's there's more resentment that builds up, and anger, and it can be harder, and there can be less commitment the longer a couple's together.
Mm,
But I still think that dealing with the issues in the present and ultimately go back to the past, and it ultimately goes back to teaching couples how to be with each other in a different way. And I do believe that that initial spark that we have to connect is still there. It might be sullied with a lot of garbage, but it's still there. I know we believe in tshuva, but people think like, oh, people can't change. We Jews believe in tshuva. We believe that no matter how far we are, no matter how many barriers are between us and Hashem, we can always access that our initial connection, our connection of our souls as a godly soul with Him. And I think the same thing can be said in a relationship, that we have that initial connection, and that's because Hashem wanted us to put us together because He knew that this relationship was what needed to happen. And if we had that initial connection with each other, I believe it's still there. And many couples, they still have a connection, even if they have challenges. But couples who are in major crisis, it is sometimes hard to access that.
mm,
But
yeah.
I still believe it's there beneath the surface if we allow ourselves to go there.
As a therapist, did you think about the story of Yitzhak and Rivka and be like, they should have just had open communication about Yaakov and Esav, and then none of this would have happened. Um, did you ever look back at the stories and be like,
Nah, it's hard to say about the Avos HaKadoshim. We can't
right,
even understand. They were not, they're not like human beings like us. I mean, so
right,
they lived, but they're such a. I mean, I
right.
can't,
No,
can't even. Yeah, but so for me to even think about it, we see sibling rivalry and all of the relationship challenges that we have in Sefer Bereshit, well, the whole Tanakh, but especially
mm,
Sefer Bereshit and relationships. We even see, it's funny, like one of the things that there's different paradigms of relationship too, of marriage. Like for example, a lot of us think about, as I mentioned, the romantic stage. So that sounds like more like, they'll have to like, again, I can call it romance, Yaakov and Rachel, but there's that love. He loved Yaakov, loved Rachel, and then he married her. But then we
mm,
see by Yitzchak, he married her and then he loved her. So, you know, it doesn't always have to be, you don't always have to have this, infatuation with somebody. You can, love is something that you can build. This is like a side point, but as you brought up the avos, I just was thinking about that because I think it is a issue that comes up, I would say, from couples more than others, because there are a lot of people who I would say have gotten married and maybe didn't have the strongest emotional connection with their spouse, either because they didn't get to know them or because they were just kind of told, okay, this is what you need to look for, and as long as there are no red flags, just proceed. And the struggle is, well, how do I didn't feel anything really so much. How does it work? So there's
right.
two
Well,
there's two
that actually,
paradigms. Yeah.
yeah, well, that actually leads into a question that I generally ask all the people I interview, which is how much does like our culture and our religion compound this issue? It sounds like what you're saying is, I mean, I'll just talk about it from a personal perspective. My children, are Hashem, they don't talk to the opposite gender, and my daughter's going into shidduchim soon, and I think to myself, how is she going to have a conversation with a boy? How is she going to know if she likes him? How is she going to know if, like, how are you going to fall in love and make a decision? And, you know, what I don't know what people used to do because whatever, I think my dating story maybe was a little bit different than it is now, the way that the shidduch system is rigged. But I think that you're making a really good point about how it's now set up that possibly people go into relationships without that romance that um the media has glorified, romanticized, no pun intended. So, but do you think there's any other challenges for the frum community in this regard?
Yeah. So I do see it is, I would say it is challenging. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not suggesting a change because I mean there's pluses and minuses, but I do see that there is a challenge when a person does not have a strong connection initially, and it doesn't mean romance like in the movies, but even just like an attraction and an excitement for this person, and it depends on how many times people see each other. It is varying kind of, I would say, standards depending on the community, etc. But
Also,
what
there's lashon
happens? Yeah,
hara. I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, but just
yeah.
to bring up another point that, like when I was younger, if I had any fights with my husband or anything, I didn't run to my local like kollel wives and be like, "You're not going to believe what my husband said." Da,
Mhm.
da, 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 da. And they would say, "Oh, calm down. You're overreacting. You guys need to grow it." There was not what you would imagine as like girlfriend talk because lashon hara and sneas, and you're not supposed to do that. So that could also be a compounding factor when it comes to, I mean, for the good and for the bad. I could see both. I could see it going both ways.
Before marriage, you're saying because you don't know about people, because no one wants to say anything bad,
No, not during marriage.
or just
I
support
mean,
afterwards.
yeah, support afterwards. That there's not like whatever. My husband was in Lakewood, and we lived in the classical Lakewood housing where there's 100 Colwell families, all the same age with the same children, with the same everyone's going through the same thing. And if ever my husband did something that annoyed me, like eat the leftover dinners without asking, and I was planning on having that for dinner, I couldn't like complain to my fellow Kola wives because it's not sneas and it's lashon hara, and really what I needed someone to say is like, yeah, yeshiva, base measures guys, Kola guys, you got to make a little bit more food. Like I would have
Yeah,
appreciated that support, but because and through the years, I still hold that that's to the it's like to it's to our benefit and to our detriment. It's both. It's that dialectical part of not sharing everything that's going on in your life and not spreading anything. And also, you can't take back complaints about your husband, and that's spreading lashon hara about your own husband or your children could obviously cause a lot more problems. But I also see it as being a con.
yeah. I mean, that's just to just at one point. I think that's why it's important to have a rebbitzin or mashpia or someone like that you can talk to. That you don't need to tell your friends or your because people that you are your same peer group, but someone that you can talk to in confidence who has experience, who can tell you, okay, this is normal, this isn't normal, or here's some advice what you can do in those situations. It's like you have a chassan kala teacher, but having somebody, a mentor with you as in the beginning of your relationship could be extremely helpful in those type of situations where you can do it in a sneeze way without it being like, coloring the opinion of everyone around you,
Right,
the
right. Okay.
friend. Yeah.
I made it about me again. I'm sorry. This is something I've been thinking about for 23 years. So now,
Yeah, no, no,
now you
it's
have the
no
opportunity to
problem.
listen to me rant and rave about it.
Yeah.
But
But I think that's a good point. But I want to just go back if you don't mind, go back to that point. I've seen couples who have been horrible, horrible situations and have been able to repair because they once had a connection. They felt really strongly about each other. So even though one of the spouse did something really horrible, but they saw that they had a good relationship and there was more of a buy-in. And I want to say a good relationship, but they felt a connection. Whereas if someone never really felt connected, it is much harder to have a buy-in. Why should I do the work? Why should I try to make this work with this person? I don't really know them. I never really liked them or felt connected. So, you know, why do I have to do that? I think that what it is it all comes down to commitment. And this is hard for I think it's very hard for us, especially in our generation, especially with our disposable society where they design things, your phone or your computer is designed to not last as long. It's designed to be replaced. And your marriage is not designed to be replaced, at least from a Torah perspective. It's something that requires work. It's something that requires commitment. And I think we have a hard time with that in our day and age, more so than ever. And this is what, but this is what's so on the one hand, in a situation where it's a shidduch dating and maybe there is not so much connection, but I would say this is a difference between, let's say, even like Hasidic dating and maybe like more general from dating. In this Hasidic community, there's a certain life, I would say, the, on the one hand, it's the mile chisaron. There's less opportunities, there's less choices, but that can be a mila. Meaning, if you could do everything that you want, it's very confusing. Well, I can marry this person or that person. If there's kind of a set path for like, okay, this is what everybody does the same thing. And I'm not into conformity. So but at the same time, there's a mile to it that everyone knows this is the kind of lifestyle we live, and this is the type of person, the type of midas we're looking for, and the type we have similar families. There's a lot less to argue about. Now, it doesn't mean there's going to be problems. There's personality clashes. There's also issues in all communities, but some of the issues that people argue about in I say the broader from community are not necessarily going to be popping up in there because it's very clear about what they want. Now you have some people who I would say rebel or they don't really want to conform, so you have those issues too. But it's two people who have similar values and are committed to making a life and are simple. Uh, they can have a very happy relationship, a happy marriage, and with time they grow to love each other. They didn't have to have the love from the beginning. And I think in the general community, it's a lot more difficult. So that if you don't have that initial connection there, it can be harder. And I know speaking for myself, we went out. I mean, I don't say how traditional it was or not, but we were initially set up by a friend, a mutual friend, set us up, and then we went out. We were pretty clear, I guess, pretty early on that we were going to get married, but we felt a very strong connection with each other, so that when we had problems, there was still a commitment there because we knew how much we liked each other. We wanted to make it work. And even after we had all of the problems, we knew that we did like each other and felt very strongly about each other at some point. So there was a bind to make this work. Whereas if this was just like, if we just met and our parents set us up together and yeah, we had the same kind of ideals, what we want for life, but we didn't really feel a strong emotional connection or attraction. I can't say whether the commitment would have been enough to make it work. In theory, it is, but you have to have very strong commitment. And I found that with the Imago process, it helped me even be more committed because I saw the purpose in it. If you don't see a purpose in your suffering, it's very nice to say, it's nice to stay married, it's, especially if you have children, to stay married together for the kids. But if you're in pain and you don't see any purpose to this, and you feel it's just like a death sentence, why would anybody want to stay in such a relationship? So I found that the Imago therapy helped me tremendously to be able to see that the power struggle was not just bad luck. The power struggle was a means towards an end, which we call the conscious marriage. That the whole purpose of the struggle was in order for us to work on our own issues. And when I saw how picture perfect it was, how exactly everything was b'hashgacha pratis, it gave me faith in the relationship that I know that, okay, it's not always going to be good. It's a work in progress, but I'm in the right relationship. I just need to become the right partner.
Actually, that leads to the perfect next question. I have heard, tell me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I have heard that one of the main complaints that couples who go to couples therapy have is that it's always like bashing one partner over the other. It's always like this person is not communicating well, or this person is undermining that parent, and then that the partner who gets, let's say, bashed on the most doesn't want to go to therapy. Why should I go to therapy? It's like, what did I do wrong? And so I've heard from a couple of friends of mine who did go to couple counseling that this is a real issue in the regular modalities. Do you find that to be something that is an issue in Imago, or is that mitigated by just the way that you guys handle, the personal responsibility?
Sure. It's really the opposite of what it should never happen in an imago therapy session. If someone's really trained, certified imago therapist, It's the
Oh no,
one
I
thing that
wasn't. I wasn't saying
should
imago.
happen.
I was saying
No, no, but I was
general.
saying, you were saying, would it ever be an imago? But I'm saying, I know you were asking me, would this ever be a case in an imago session? I was
Right.
saying it wouldn't, and this is a problem. I want to just say a few things. I'm not here to bash couples therapy. I mean, that's what I do, but I do want to just, I guess, to enlighten the public on this, that, and people are well-meaning, and therapists, I would say most of them have good intentions, and they're doing this to help people. They're not doing this to make money. They're doing this to help people. And at the same time, most therapists, this I saw a statistic once, most people who are doing couples therapy, um, their training is, I saw like almost like 80%, the training is one marriage and family therapy class in their master's program. Now I can tell you from that would not be enough to help you do couples therapy. Anyone who's doing couples therapy, I mean, you can get experience over time, but anyone who says they're a couples therapist and that's their training, they're it's like going to your I don't know, your general practitioner to do brain surgery. Sure, they took a class in med school about surgery. Would you want them doing brain surgery on you? Of course not. So
Sounds like you should run.
so that's part of the problem is a lot of well-meaning therapists are working with couples and they're not trained. So that's one reason why we have this phenomenon that people are going to couples therapy and it's making it worse, or this therapist is taking sides. The people,
Right.
one of my first couples told me, she's a very enlightened person. She said, I stopped going to our couples therapist because he kept, she kept saying that it was my husband's fault the whole time. And I know that I'm also partly to blame. So
Right.
she had enough insight to realize that. So any therapist who's going to take sides is not really doing couples therapy in, in an effective way. Um, and I would say, and the Mago approach is entirely the opposite. The whole purpose is that we're not here to take sides. And because of the theory of Imago and the actual practice of the dialogue process that we engage the couple and have them facing each other, it makes it much more difficult to take sides. So I can't say that I've never had a part of me that felt like, yeah, I'm really triggered by this. I'm really triggered by this, the wife or the husband, or I don't really like them. I really think this person is a good guy. But that's a little voice that comes in and I have to shut it up because my job is the relationship. My job is not to take sides. So it makes sense why people would not like couples therapy because it's not helpful. It makes one person put on the defensive, and it's really never about one person solely. It's about what both people are doing to each other because both people trigger each other. And when we trigger each other, we act out in bad ways. And it's not excusing the behavior, but everybody has to take ownership for that. So instead of focusing on the content and, well, who's doing this right, who's doing this wrong, it's about guiding the couple and gently encouraging them and teaching them how to behave and how to interact with each other. And we have them do it in the session. So they're not talking to me about the other and complaining. I'm actually having them talk to each other. You have a problem. I don't like that you don't come home on time from work. Okay, so let's have a dialogue about that. The wife can talk to the husband about that. And it's not my job to say, yeah, you really should be on time. You should call your wife when you're late. That's not my job. She needs to tell her what she needs to be able to articulate what she needs. He needs to be able to hear what she needs. And it's not about blaming one person or the other. It's about helping people open up and share in a non-judgmental way. And that's the only safe way you can get both people on board to change. Otherwise, it's all one-sided and it makes one person feel horrible and it doesn't actually help change anything anyway.
Yes, exactly. That exactly speaks to the question that I asked. Thank you. Um, I was wondering if, do you have any success stories? You mentioned the couple where um the wife recognized that she was a part of the problem. Do you have any success stories where a couple came in and even though you didn't take sides, there was a part of you that was like, I don't know about this couple, and they were able to turn a corner of some sort.
I have a lot of couples that I've seen. I mean, besides success stories, but a lot of couples where I wasn't, say, part of me wasn't so sure. because one person was almost felt like they were kind of obstructing the process, and what I found was that we need to focus on the positive. They're coming back week in and week out, which means they're getting something out of it and they're committed to having a better relationship and they're committed to the process because they don't need to come, they don't need to waste their time and they don't need to waste their money. So there, obviously there's something about this that's helping them, even if they're saying that it's not. And just I saw in a few cases where they just kept coming and they kept coming, and eventually we kind of broke through the resistance and things got better. So of course, as a therapist, it's much easier when we see right away the couple falls in love after the first session. That's great, but the ones that are a little bit more tricky are challenging and sometimes frustrating because I believe that the couple can get better. I believe that they can heal. And if they would just follow the process, they could do it. So just holding them and wherever they're at, really accepting people where they're at, validating their concerns, validating their resistance, not pushing against it, not challenging them, and allowing them to get to the place when they feel where they feel safe enough at the pace that they need to be able to break through. And that's what I've seen kind of to be the success. It's just really being there and being patient. And it's not about my agenda to want to make people better. Of course, I want people to want people to be happy. I want to help people. That's why I got into this work. But it's really not about, it's not even about the outcome. It's about the couple getting what they need and whatever that looks like and however long that takes.
So I'm hearing you say a few really interesting things. One is that there needs to be a commitment to show up day in and day out and do the work. And if there isn't a connection there or wasn't a connection there, it doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does make it much more difficult. That there's also this component of taking personal responsibility to not say, it's all this person's fault. And of course, the therapist not taking sides and not focusing on like winning the couple over or winning the battle, or it's about communicating, the couples communicating and dialoguing within the confines of this structure to teach them skills that they can use when they're not in therapy with you. Um, so what would you say? And I don't want to give the whole program out for free, but if you were to give like the first bit of advice, besides for call a therapist, but what would be your first piece of advice, or one little nugget of something that could be very helpful that people could implement right now in their life to try to better communicate or start to build some of these connections and these bridges that might have been broken through, I guess, maladjusted coupling, if that's a word I just made up.
Mhm. Sure. I mean, there are a few things I could off the top of my head, but one thing could start off with is making an appointment to see if now's a good time to talk. I would say that half of the problems that we have is we catch our spouse at the wrong time.
Mm,
We catch them off guard. We're upset about something, so we think that we have license just to dump on them and and to tell them what we're feeling, but they might not be available. And what often ensues is that they react and then it just ups the ante, and then there's a big blow up, which could have been prevented. When
mm.
someone knows they're going to hear something that might be challenging, they still need some skills how to listen. But even if they know that, they can work on being a little bit less reactive. Whereas if you're caught off guard, you're just going to go right into reactivity. So I would say that's a number one.
I
It
love
says,
that.
and
That's
it's and we see this in the Torah actually. It says in Sefer Vayikra, it opens up Vayikra that Hashem called to Moshe and then he spoke to him. So why did he call him and then speak to him? So the Gemara says it teaches us derech eretz that before you speak to someone, you have to call them first. I mean, you have to see if they're available. You don't just kind of bombard somebody.
right.
So that is a really easy way. And even if you have a question, it's like there's so many things people, especially nowadays, we're so distracted. Everyone's, let's say someone's on their phone. I'm writing an email right now, and I'm in heavy thought, and my wife starts talking to me about something, and I just snap, and I'm like, you're, you lost my train of thought, or like, why you do, and we have a big fight over something stupid. If whoever it is asking a question, do you have a moment right now? Just, yes, can I just speak to you in a moment? I'm just about to finishing up an email. I'll be with you in just a moment. You've avoid a silly little fight. Or so it doesn't even have to be an important conversation. It could be just, I want to just ask you a question about who is doing carpool, but you're in the middle of something and distracted and you get snappy, and then that leaves a bad energy. So just ask, I have a question. Do you have a moment? And then it's like you feel that your spouse is considerate of your needs, and it's you can be less reactive. So that's one thing you can apply kind of right away.
Yes, I love that. That is so great. Um, I I have learned so much about Imago, and I feel like we could probably be here for another hour.
Yeah,
Just
there's a lot
still
more.
getting there's so much more. Before we end, is there anything that you specifically wanted to highlight or bring to the table in terms of sharing with the audience about your practice, about the modality, or or they should just check out the marriagerestorationproject.com.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's welcome to check out the marriagerestorationproject.com. We have a lot of resources. You can learn more about our approach. And in general, don't despair. Even if you think that you've tried everything, we've had people who've come for, you know, 7 therapists. We're the seventh therapist. Imago is different, and that's why I really, I've been doing this for. I started doing this shortly after my wife and I did it for for ourselves. I started learning it professionally because I saw that it worked, and I've never looked back. And there are a lot of wonderful other modalities out there, I'm sure. And if they help people, that's the main thing. But I've never felt the need to look to anything else. And not because I'm not a curious person, I'm a very curious person, but I also know that when something works, at least works for me and makes sense to me, uh, I see the simplicity of Imago. People get very distracted. It really cuts to the core of the issue, and it helps people really create safe connection, which is what ultimately everyone needs. So there are a lot of fancy things out there, and everyone's into this new thing and that new thing. But I find through time, this has been there to help me with a couple. So if you've been in a situation, and I've seen people who've been through counseling and it has not worked for them. So if nothing has worked, don't give up. There's other ways out there. There's other opportunities to get better, and we're happy to help you. We have group workshops. We have private retreats in various locations around the country, around the world, and online. And we also have a lot of free resources. So we're happy to help you or answer any questions that you have about your relationship. Um, I just believe that so many people are suffering, I would say needlessly, and they just don't have the right tools. Marriage doesn't come with an instruction manual. People don't know what they're doing. It's no one's fault. And there's a tremendous opportunity for growth and healing that can happen. It will be the hardest relationship you'll ever do, being married, but it can be the most fulfilling relationship. And then we say that Ezer Kenegdo, that the kenegdo, the hisnagdus, the opposition in the relationship, the challenges that you experience with your spouse are dafka going to be the things that will be the azer that will help you grow as an individual. So to be able to be open to that, and instead of to look at the challenges as a problem and a reason to call it quits, to look at the challenges as an opportunity to grow and heal, and really to achieve what you were put on this earth to do. Because Hashem, Hashem created us and He gave us the koichos to be able to deal with the challenges. Otherwise, there would be no point. What do we need it for in this world? So He gave us the ability to do that, and it's not fun all the time, and it's painful. But to believe in ourselves that we have the ability to heal and the ability to deal with the challenges, um, I guess walking away with that hope is really important, because I find that couples really, when they're down and out, they don't have much hope. And I just want to let you know that I believe I don't know you, but I believe in you. I believe in the hope because I've seen it time and time again. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Right. And I would say that it sounds like you're doing wonderful work. And I hope you can continue to be a shliach for marriages, getting stronger and people being able to communicate and shalom bias. It's important work, and
Amen.
I really appreciate you coming on to the show with me this evening. And please, let's do this another time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. I'd love to come back.
Sure. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.